The biggest surprise for me getting into this career is probably my sense of purpose. There is something to say about being able to build something. And that's one of the things that I really like about Bubble is it empowers so many people that say, hey, I don't know how to code or I don't know how to do this. You can build anything. Like that's a huge component of it that I had lacked before. So it really empowers me to feel like, hey, I can do anything. And it doesn't take a lot of effort either to do that. My name is Nguyen. I am the co-founder of Homads, which is a medium-term rental booking site. How I found Bubble is I was a non-technical founder and just had a large group of developers. We built it on Rails and React and ran it for several years and then got to a point to where we had so much technical debt that I had to either raise more money or shut it down. And prior to even knowing Bubble, I was doing clickable prototypes so that I could go fundraise while my team, I didn't want to bother our development team. And that's when I started getting into no code and realizing, oh, I can do more than just a clickable prototype. And as I started delving more into it and we got to a point of where it was so much technical debt, that was when I said, you know what, last Hail Mary, can I rebuild everything on Bubble? And that's what I did, and that's where we are today.
What was the process like looking for a solution to rebuild everything? That's a huge endeavor.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part for a lot of founders is they don't want to go down a rabbit hole, build something, and then realize it doesn't have the capabilities that they want, or they get boxed into something. I built on a handful of different platforms. I did it only with a few. I didn't do it with Homads. I did it with just side projects first. I was looking into it as a clickable prototype. And so there are a lot of apps out there that allow you to do that. And then it was, the beginning parts of no code. What can I do that has backend functionality? And that was a new world to me because that wasn't something that I knew existed. And so I started playing on multiple other apps, went down some rabbit holes, found that they had certain limitations, not a great backend. Then I did a lot of research on YouTube as well. I got to see what people were building. There's also a Bubble forum. And so that was really helpful. So I found a lot of things there. But I tend to be someone that, doesn't read the instructions. I just go in and build. And so I started doing that into Bubble. So I just delved in and built a couple of apps, realized, okay, this is feasible. And I realized that there wasn't a lot of limitations, but yet the learning curve was actually very easy for me to get into it where I could build, the back end, the front end, all of that. The biggest part for me was it is a really robust platform. We had spent, thousands of dollars, $100,000 on building our previous platform. So getting it onto Bubble seemed like a huge endeavor. But it took me about a month actually to build it. I would say 16-hour days, every day kind of month, so maniacally building, but it is very feasible to do so. I mean, when I first built a couple, actually the first one that I built was one that we wanted to go fundraise for. And it was what we wanted to build on traditional development. And that's when I said, oh, I'll just build it out and then we'll, and I realized I just built the whole app. And it was video based at the time. And that was actually very interesting is because that requires for it to go smoothly from the user endpoint, a lot more than you would think. I got into CDNs. What's great about Bubble is not just the Bubble platform. You integrate into so many other things, right? And I was able to see, oh, okay, this is the best CDN I want to use for this, so that my videos get deployed onto devices at whatever size it needs to be. It goes quickly. I learned a lot through that process, and I realized Bubble is the foundation of it. It helps you build the front end and the back end, but all of the big components that you would typically use anyways, if you're building on traditional development, you can do it way faster. For instance, it took my developers, we were doing single sign-on, that was it. I want to sign on with Facebook or I want to sign on with Google, and it took, I think, a month and a half for them to do, which was a little ridiculous even for traditional development, I feel like. But it took me 3 hours to do because if even, just because we had the plugins, it was just super fast with Bubble. I always say I have no business being in the business I'm in. I started a real estate tech company. I knew nothing about real estate, I knew nothing about tech, but I have always been a business person. And so I went to University of Texas in Austin, double majored in sociology and film. I worked in nonprofits, I was a video editor, so the most technical I was probably the post-production side. But I have always been very entrepreneurial. I like challenges, I was able to learn new things. And so what was helpful and probably what is easier for me to get into Bubble was because I had several years working with a development team. And I got very lucky is because my head of tech was someone that was very, very good with working with someone that is non-technical. So I understood what, deploying to production was, pushing production. I understood what the processes, the concepts of development was. So that when I got to Bubble, it made a lot more sense. I wasn't coding anything, but I understood logic. If this happens, then I want this to happen, right? And that there is a front end, there is a back end, just pure concepts. But it was easier for me to jump off from that point is because I had already been in startups and technology for several years. I just wasn't doing the coding then. I was talking to someone recently, and I talked about when I first got into tech startups, it was 8 years ago. I was younger. And at that time, it was anything I did was a challenge. It was, if anyone does CrossFit, it's the people like CrossFit because it finds the weakest part of you. And you have to kind of learn how to be better at that part. And that's what startups did for me. I was bad at public speaking. I was bad at networking. I was bad at all these things. So it forced me to be better at it. I loved that part, and that's actually why I stayed so much into it. But in hindsight, now that it's been this long, I also realized I wasn't as focused either. I was excited to have the opportunity, the challenges, to learn, what does product market fit look like? What does that even mean? How do I build a product? Everything. But if you are more focused, then you can get to profitability, or you can get yourself to a place that if you wanted to raise money, you could. And those weren't really what I was focused on. Now it is, and it's a lot. I see just how quickly you can get to those goals if you're focused. So I think that was probably our hardest struggle. The biggest surprise for me getting into this career is probably my sense of purpose. Before I, had my career, I was doing like commercials for large companies. But I would say that there wasn't a lot of creativity to it. It kind of eats your soul in some ways if you do too much commercial. And I just didn't really feel like I had a lot of purpose. And that is in a handful of ways. One is what I was working on didn't really serve a purpose I cared for. But then two, it didn't really give me a lot of confidence of my ability. There is something to say about being able to build something. And that's one of the things that I really like about Bubble is it empowers so many people that say, hey, I don't know how to code or I don't know how to do this. You can build anything. I think that's what most developers think. Like when you can code, that's probably what they're thinking. They're like, I can build anything. And obviously there's more to building than just in the business, but that's a huge component of it that I had lacked before. So it really empowers me to feel like, hey, I can do anything. And it doesn't take a lot of effort either to do that. So I have had this conversation many times with a lot of people about if they were in my position, hey, I want to start something, I don't really know how to do it, I don't have the budget, or I don't have the network of technical people to go out and do this. It's just go out and do it, right? And maybe this is, we've had interns who are in college, we've had so it's younger people like my age, older, who just don't have the experience. It's always go out and do it. A lot of our interns would be like, oh, I don't know if we want to push this production. I said, you're going to have 5 users upset at you. It's not the biggest deal. And oftentimes it's really difficult is because if you come from corporate or you're coming from a university, you're scared to do something because it should be done right. But if you're just starting out, just execute. Push out things as much as you can and learn from it and keep on reiterating. I don't know if it's knowing that my biggest regret is Bubble wasn't here when I first started. because I would have saved so much money, so much time. I would be there so much faster. But 9 years ago, that was not the option. Technology was just not where it's at. But I think that's true. If you were to talk to someone when I first started, it was 10 years prior. Accessibility to even build technology was even harder back then. So as we keep on growing, I could only imagine several years. I mean, we already have now being able to push to mobile so easily, and then AI builders where you're not building out everything. That is crazy in comparison when I first started on Bubble too, or any no code. So I think it's just, going so quickly that I guess I would say if I had to choose a regret is I wish I was keeping up with technology as quickly as it changes, because I would have known a lot earlier. So when I first got started, I just built immediately just built from scratch, which ideally I would say probably isn't the best way of doing it. But that was a while back, right? I think there are people who are very creative, where you can create within your head. And then there are people who can look at examples and pull out the best of those examples, and I tend to be the latter. So I tend to look at what it is. If I think, hey, I really want to create this solution, I look at what are the solutions closest to it, and I look at what are the best people doing, and how are they building it, and then I would build from there. Now there are tons of templates. I wouldn't particularly enjoy using templates just because I like building out custom, but you can always pull pieces of those templates out. I have not used the AI builder, but I can imagine that that's going to be a route to go towards as well. So whenever I get stuck on a problem or a bug, it typically is, everyone kind of has their threshold of how long they really want to go at it. And I think the more experienced you are, you kind of have an idea of how long you should really be troubleshooting. I tend to get really stubborn about certain things where I'm I know this should work, I'm going to try these things, and I'll have my top 5-10 things depending on how long it takes. But at some point I then think, okay, will it take longer for me to keep on testing this, or can I go out and post it on a forum or post it on a Facebook group that is for Bubble, right? People are really responsive in that way. I like it is because Bubble is more well known. So there have been other apps I've used where it will take months if you can get someone to troubleshoot something. This is relatively fast. I tend to get an answer within 24 hours. Hardest part for me is my mind will keep on trying to figure out and troubleshoot, so I won't be able to go to sleep. So I'll do my best to try to figure it out, but then I'll ask and try to forget the problem. I think I have only deployed 3 or 4 apps. Homads is our biggest one, and it's our most ongoing one because it is our main company, right? But prior to that, I think it was year 2. One was almost like an internal tool. Sometimes I do use Bubble as an internal tool if it's faster, just because I know how to build in it. For me, it's just very easy to say, hey, I want to build an AI feature, but I want to have some custom features to it. I'll build with Bubble, but essentially it's just ongoing of one big project right now. So when we build, and actually my favorite quote of knowing when it's ready is they say, if you are not embarrassed of your product, you've launched too late. And I love that quote is because one, I'm always highly embarrassed of what we push out, but I also know there are people that are, just have paralysis where they will wait a year. And you have no feedback from your users. You have no bug testing as you have it out there. The panic of, hey, I just pushed this out and this is not working, and having to fix it then is part of the process. We had an interesting transition because we had a product prior to going over to Bubble. We had users and we were revenue generating. And then COVID happened, and that was kind of the perfect time to also rebuild from there. But it was only a little bit of revenue, and so we said, hey, we'll push it to Bubble. And we killed our revenue almost a little bit prior to that because we said let's not concentrate on that, let's just concentrate on getting it over to Bubble. And from there, it was, okay, let's put in the metrics that we couldn't have done it before. Let's put in the SEO things that we, our developers weren't doing before. And so we had so much more accessibility, because if you're non-technical and you use a analytics software, you have to add in the events for each, someone submits something, someone purchases something. You have to create that event. If you're non-technical, you rely on your developers. If they don't see that as a priority, you do not get that data point. And for us, we were able to deploy in a lot of areas of the user experience. And that gave us a lot of information where we say, oh, okay, they're bottlenecking here. They are going here, and we realized they can't even sign in because there was something going on. It used to take us months to be able to see that, which was ridiculous. So for us, it was, oh, okay, well, adding in the analytics really helped us. It wasn't even our users talking to us. You would think when you have that many users that they would say something to you, but oftentimes they just, they abandon, and then if they really, really want something, then maybe they'll tell you. But oftentimes you're losing out on a lot of people just because you had something that, user interface that just wasn't working properly, or a bug or an error. So I think the analytics part was actually what helped us understand user behaviors. I like the term visual development. That's one that clicks for most people. They realize, oh, it's very drag and drop, Oftentimes people do understand, because when it comes to no code, they tend to understand if this and that, because they'll use it as a business solution. I normally go to the analogy of if this and that, right? Even just that terminology. If this happens, then that will happen, right? So it's all just pure logic. Is a better way of explaining backend is if you use if this and that. I think most people get the building the front end part because it's drag and drop. You say that, most people will get that as well. Whenever we're on traditional development, it was, if you're non-technical, that means you have to find someone that is technical. So you already don't have that resource. If you don't have someone that's technical, and even if you do find someone there, your buddy, they still gotta get paid. So then it costs so much. And that was always something I had in my head was, it's an unknown. I don't know what's going on. It costs me a whole bunch. And if we don't get this much revenue and then I gotta raise more money, or is this even a venture-backed company? What if I wanted to do lifestyle and, pull in that? I now gotta hire someone. What if they leave? How do I handle this software, right? Back then it was almost like the gut feeling, like just realizing we're gonna hit a dead end. Being able to do small changes, even if you're non-technical, I will tell people, learn to get into Bubble still. Because when you wanna change the copy on your homepage, it shouldn't take you that long. With Bubble, it shouldn't. And you should know how to do that because it's very easy. And so I get excited is because I don't really see a roadblock for scalability. Right? There's always a next step. Oh, okay, if this back end, doesn't work for me, how do I progress from there? There's always a solution on how you can do that on what I'm working on right now. And that's what I get most excited about. So I traveled from Austin, Texas to get here. So I'm a coffee drinker, but I cannot have caffeine. So normally it's like either mushroom coffee or decaf. I like my coffee. I think that's probably a common one for most people. I do love, and this is an old school one because y'all deployed this a long time ago, but being able to have the responsiveness and understand it, being able to bring in Figma designs into Bubble, I love. I think any features that help me on the front end, I love, because I'm just much weaker on the front end and it just makes it a lot easier for me. Honestly, I mean, the biggest tip is there's so much you can find online. YouTube at 50% speed or 150, right? Like, just go through it, make sure you're doing it right. People go through everything. You can build anything, and you can visually see how they're doing everything. So it's like a treasure trove there. That would be my biggest tip. If I had to describe Bubble in one word, it would be empowering.